Hey guys, tonight we journey to a place that's somehow more legendary than it is livable, ancient Greece. You've probably seen the statues, heard the stories, with philosophers in robes, golden temples, and warriors in bronze. But tonight, you're not a god, or a hero, or even a very important person. You're just, you. And that means waking up in a world where comfort is scarce, privacy is a rumor, and deodorant hasn't been invented. Your eyes flutter open to the pale light slipping through a cloth-curtained doorway. You're lying on what barely passes for a bed, a thin pallet of straw and old wool, directly on a clay floor that's colder than you hoped. Something's poking your ribs. Probably the straw again, but possibly a beetle. The air smells like smoke, goats, and last night's garlic. You're wrapped in a single scratchy cloak that doesn't quite cover your feet. Which, by the way, are filthy. You slept in your tunic because changing clothes at night isn't really a thing unless you're rich. You are not. The walls of your home are made of sun-dried mud bricks, crumbly and rough. There's no window. Just a hole in the wall patched with oiled fabric. Your room is shared, obviously. If you're lucky, it's just with a sibling or two. If not, it's your whole family plus a few chickens scratching around in the corner. Everyone's already starting to stir. No one whispers. Privacy isn't a social expectation here. Everyone knows when you snore, sneeze, or talk in your sleep. There's no bathroom. Not even an outhouse. If you need to go, there's a ceramic chamber pot you'll empty later into the street-side runoff trench. That's assuming no one tripped over it in the night and spilled everything near the door. That happens a lot. Outside, the faint clatter of hooves on stone tells you it's already getting late. Maybe a neighbor is heading to the agora early. You reach for your sandals. One's missing. Classic. You find it behind the water jar after stepping in something squishy. You really hope that was bread. Most Greek homes are one story and built in a rectangle around a central courtyard. Yours is no different. That courtyard is where life happens, cooking, weaving, eating, fighting. The hearth is still warm from the night's fire, which means someone, probably your mother or a servant, got up earlier than you to stoke it. You smell the faint smoke and the bitter tang of boiled lentils, confirming it. Now here's the kicker. Despite the statues and poetry and high talk of democracy, ancient Greece is mostly dirt and discomfort. Historians still argue whether rural life was better or worse than urban living. You're pretty sure it doesn't matter. Both have fleas. You stretch your back and hear it pop like dry olives. Your hair's a mess. There's no mirror. Just polished bronze, if you're lucky. It warps your reflection like a carnival funhouse, but hey, you can tell you've still got both eyes. Your face is sticky from sleep. Water's in a clay jug that's heavy, chipped, and questionably clean. You splash your face and instantly regret it. It's freezing. Refreshing? Not exactly. Just cold enough to make you curse and alert everyone else that you're awake now too. There's no coffee. Let's get that out of the way early. No tea either. You chew a bit of dried fig if you've got one and pray that today you won't be hauling amphory or sweeping the roof tiles again. Someone hands you a hunk of stale barley bread. It's dense enough to use as a weapon. You gnaw on it like a determined rodent. It's a miracle anyone in this time has teeth, honestly. Some mornings, if you're in a port town like Piraeus, you'll hear the sails flapping and shouting from triremes. These are warships getting ready to leave. You imagine fleeing with them, sailing into the bright blue Aegean. But you're not a sailor. You're just a citizen. Or maybe not. More on that later. And you've got chores. Or labor. Or temple duties. Or goat herding. Take your pick. They're all exhausting. You look down at your tunic. It's linen, if you're lucky, wool if you're not. It smells like a mix of smoke and dried sweat, which is as good as it's going to get. Laundry means beating clothes on rocks by the river. Speaking of that, you hear your neighbors already yelling about someone stealing their soaproot plant. Again, your home might have a tiny altar tucked in a wall niche. You light a bit of incense or sprinkle some wine, if there's any, to appease Hestia, goddess of the hearth. You're not sure if it works, but you'd rather not take the chance. People around here still believe that bad dreams are messages from the gods, so you don't mention that nightmare about snakes. And definitely don't tell anyone if it involved Apollo. You duck outside. The sun's climbing. It'll get hot later. Blinding, oven hot. But for now, it's just a glow behind the tiled roofs. Chickens are making a racket in someone's yard. A dog growls near the alley. Your neighbor, who looks exactly like a statue of a grumpy satyr, is already cursing at a goat, and just like that, your day in ancient Greece begins. No deodorant. No hot showers. No social media. Just dust, chores, and barley bread. Hope you brought sandals. Before your eyes even fully adjust to the daylight, you hear it. Footsteps. Not your family's. Not a neighbor's. These are quiet, rhythmic, practiced. You glance toward the courtyard. Someone's already moving, grinding grain in a heavy stone mortar. Someone else is drawing water from the household cistern. And neither of them is you, they are enslaved people. And they've been up for hours. In ancient Greece, slavery is not a moral debate. It's infrastructure. Almost every household that isn't scraping bottom owns at least one enslaved person. Wealthier homes might have 10, 20, or even more. And they do everything. They cook, clean, fetch, build, and even raise children that aren't theirs. Some are war captives, some were born into it, and some were sold into bondage by families trying to eat for one more week. Your household is modest, so you've only got two. A Thracian girl with hair like straw, and a boy who's so quiet you sometimes forget he's there. Today, she's grinding the barley with that same grim rhythm that makes your jaw ache just to hear it. The boy is collecting firewood, careful not to tread too loudly or drop anything. If he does, the head of the house will shout. Or worse, you walk past them, unsure whether to greet them. You were taught not to speak unless it's giving orders. But she glances at you. There's something in her look. Not anger exactly. Just the weariness of someone who's worked too long on too little sleep. You look away. In the corner of the courtyard, a clay pot has already cracked in the heat. No one flinches. Broken pots are just part of life, like fleas or infections. You imagine trying to live like this every day. Waking before sunrise, working non-stop, hoping not to be sold or beaten. And the worst part? Legally, they're property. They have no names in official records. No rights. Not even in death. Historians still argue whether enslaved people in Greece were treated better or worse than in Rome or Egypt, but really, what's the point? Not as bad as a pretty bleak comfort. If you were enslaved, and let's be honest, that's more likely than being a philosopher, you'd be stuck in this loop: rise early, toil hard, eat little, and pray you don't anger the wrong person. Some slaves become teachers or scribes, even accountants. But most haul water and scrub grime from clay walls that never seem to stay clean. There's a faint smell of urine near the back corner. The boy has been emptying the chamber pots there, splashing water from a clay jug afterward, but the scent lingers. No one comments. You're all just pretending it's fine. You step past a small garden. A patch of dusty herbs and dying onions. She tends it too, when she's not cooking or weaving or kneeling on cracked tiles to scrub soot off the hearth. You once saw her hands. The calluses looked like bark. Someone nearby starts shouting. Loud. Fast. Angry. It's not in your household. It's from across the stone wall. Maybe a merchant is yelling at his cook, or a housewife is berating a girl who burned the porridge. You can't make out the words, but the tone is familiar. You hear that every day. So does she. You sit at the edge of the courtyard, pretending not to listen, pretending this is normal. Because here, it is, the sun is rising higher now. Light slants across the rooftops in long gold bars. The Thracian girl moves into the shade without missing a beat. She knows how to work without overheating, how to avoid eye contact, how to breathe through the dust. You watch her roll dough, knead it, portion it, all with mechanical grace. She's probably your age. Maybe younger. You try to picture what her life was before this. Was there a village, a family, a field of wheat? But it's too distant, too blank. All you see now is the rhythm of labor, the absence of softness. The boy returns with more firewood. He doesn't meet your eyes either. He's sweating, thin, and his tunic is too short. Someone hands him a crust of bread. He doesn't thank them. That's not the rule. You begin to understand. This house runs because they don't stop. Slavery is the engine of your society. Hidden just enough to ignore, present in every gesture. Temples are cleaned by enslaved hands. Ships are rowed by chained men. Silver is mined in darkness by the exhausted and doomed. You've never been to the mines. But the stories are grim. Narrow shafts, no daylight, whips for those who slow. Most who go and never come out again. Even their bones don't get a decent burial. Later in the day, if you make it to the agora, you'll likely pass a slave market. They line up bodies like cattle, inspect teeth, measure muscle. There's no shame in buying a child here. No scandal in selling one either. You chew your bread, still watching the girl sweep the floor. She hums softly. It's not a song you know. Maybe it's from home. Her real home, not this place. The notes are crooked, sad, like something blown through a hollow reed, and for a moment, you feel it. The smallness of your world. The weight of all the unseen hands holding it up. Every clean floor, every hot meal, every word you're allowed to say rests on someone else's silence. You shift, uncomfortable. The stone bench is hot now. You glance at your shadow on the wall. Clear, sharp, upright, hers is bent, broom in hand, always moving. You're still chewing that second piece of bread when someone passes you a cup. It's ceramic, plain, chipped at the rim, and half filled with wine, sort of. More like wine-flavored water. Because in ancient Greece, breakfast isn't complete without a little fermented grape product. Water alone isn't trusted. Most wells are questionable, and boiled water is for the sick or the rich. So, to make it safe, wine gets mixed in. Not to taste good. Not to get drunk. Just to kill whatever's living in the cup before it kills you. You sniff it. It smells slightly sour and vaguely herbal. No one's impressed by your hesitation, so yes, this is breakfast, barley bread and diluted wine. There's no honey today. No figs, and certainly no eggs or fresh cheese. Those are luxuries saved for festivals, rich guests, or Olympians. What you've got is the Mediterranean equivalent of soggy toast and a flat energy drink. Somehow, it's worse. There's a bowl in the center with a few black olives. They're wrinkled, bitter, briny. Someone reaches in before you do. You miss your chance. There were 4 olives. Now there are none. Historians still argue whether the average Athenian diet was healthier than ours today. Sure, you eat fewer processed sugars and no fried snacks. But you're also not exactly bursting with vitamins. Scurvy's not uncommon, and let's not even mention the dental situation. You scrape your tongue with a twig and call it a morning routine. There is no toothpaste. There is no toothbrush. And every bite of barley bread feels like chewing gravel dipped in olive oil. The bread, by the way, was baked 3 days ago. Still edible. Just barely. Hard enough to knock someone out if thrown right. You saw that happen once. Someone offers you a slice of onion. It's raw. Sharp. You eat it because it's that or nothing. It burns. Your breath now has enough power to wilt nearby herbs. Garlic was involved somehow, and you suspect it came from the same hand that milked the goat. And now we return to the wine. You sip it slowly, like a nervous actor in a tragedy. It doesn't taste good. The aftertaste is oddly metallic. Might be from the amphora it was stored in, or maybe something worse. It slides down your throat like lukewarm vinegar and sticks around longer than welcome. There is no such thing as coffee. Let that sink in. The sun climbs higher as the meal winds down. There's no formal breakfast table here. Just a few low stools, a bench, the courtyard floor. You're sitting cross-legged on a mat that smells like smoke and old goat. It's not bad, just very textured. You watch a housefly circle your cup like it owns the place. Which, in a way, it does. You glance at your hands. They're already dirty. The bread left flour dust on your fingertips, and your thumb is stained with yesterday's oil. You try wiping them on your tunic, but that's dirtier than your hands. So you wipe them on the edge of a clay basin and call it good. You're full. Sort of. Not in a satisfied way. More in the sense that you've taken the edge off hunger for the next hour. You don't eat for pleasure here. You eat to avoid collapse. Suddenly, the boy from earlier scurries past, holding a cracked bowl of lentil mash. He spills a little. No one yells, but he flinches anyway. The girl swats at a rooster getting too bold near the food scraps. It hops, offended. And struts off like it owns the street. You lean back against the clay wall, letting the sun warm your back. It's almost peaceful, until you hear someone coughing violently behind you. Deep, ragged, relentless. It sounds like something is trying to escape their lungs. You don't turn around. No one does. Coughing is background noise here, like birdsong or sandals on stone. Breakfast is short. Functional. Quiet. There's no table talk. No laughter. Just chewing, slurping, wiping, and silence. Everyone has work to do. You feel the day pressing in already, like a weight behind your eyes. Remember how food used to be a social ritual. Family breakfasts. Toast with jam. Pancakes. Forget all that. The closest thing to a ritual here is pouring a few drops of wine into the dirt to honor Dionysus before drinking. No one skips that part. Even if they're starving. Just a few drops, because in ancient Greece, the gods are always watching. And they're not known for their patience. You set the cup down, careful not to knock it over. It rolls slightly anyway, revealing the chipped side. Someone scratched a crude design into the glaze. It might be a dolphin, or a goat. It's hard to tell. There's no time to linger. The courtyard is already a blur of motion. Tools are clanking, pots shuffling, firewood being stacked, and someone is calling for their missing sandal. It's probably under your bench. The smell of smoke deepens. Someone's trying to relight the hearth. Again, and so your first meal in ancient Greece ends. No Instagram photos. No croissants. Just fermented water, dry bread, and a lot of elbow room for flies. You stand, stretch, and sigh. It's not even mid-morning, and you're already hungry again. The sun's a little higher now, and that means it's time to head out. You step over the threshold, ducking slightly as you pass through the low wooden doorway. Outside, the streets are alive with sound. Sandal slaps echo against stone, donkeys bray, greetings are shouted across rooftops, and somewhere in the distance, bronze pans clatter as someone hurries with their chores. It's time to make your way to the heart of the city, the agora. The agora isn't just a market. It's everything. Town square, debate hall, job board, and gossip center, all rolled into one dusty plaza. It smells like sweat, olives, smoke, and fish that should have been sold yesterday. You hear a flute playing off-key in the distance. Persistent as if trying to charm a snake that doesn't exist, your sandals kick up little clouds of chalky dirt as you walk. The ground is uneven, packed down by generations of footsteps, goat hooves, and wagon wheels. You pass a man leading a cart filled with amphorae. One slips, hits the stones, and shatters into 1,000 clay teeth. He doesn't even flinch. He just sighs and keeps moving. As you near the agora, the crowd thickens. You're jostled by tunics, elbows, and bags of onions. A child tries to sell you garlands of wilted flowers. A fisherman shouts something about the freshest squid in Athens, while gesturing toward a basket that looks extremely suspicious. You politely decline. Now this is where democracy happens. At least, that's what people say. In reality, it's more like a chaotic podcast where everyone is yelling over each other. You spot a few older men gathered under a sycamore tree, debating loudly. One has a scroll in hand. Another waves his arms like a human semaphore. The third just snacks on figs and looks thoroughly unimpressed. Historians still argue whether the Athenian agora was more political or economic in function. Personally, you're leaning toward loud and confusing. Stalls are arranged in rows, shaded by fraying cloth canopies. There are pots, textiles, bread, cheap wine, fish, figs, and goats. Everything is for sale or trade. Everything is negotiable, and everyone thinks they're being cheated. You hear an argument escalating near the pottery booth. Something about a cracked kylix and a debt that's definitely not going to be paid today. You duck away before it turns into a full-blown shirtless brawl. That happens here. You pass a stall selling small figurines. Most of them depict gods. Athena, Apollo, Dionysus. The seller notices your glance and immediately launches into a pitch. For protection. For fortune. For love. You nod awkwardly and pretend to inspect a tiny clay owl until he gets distracted by someone richer. In the center of the plaza, a group of men watches a performance. A poet, shirt half open and eyes wild, is reciting verses about war and love in a voice that sounds like he's choking on olive pits. People toss him coins. One man throws a handful of lentils instead. Apparently, that's acceptable currency for poets. You continue walking, and now the air shifts. There's a space ahead where the crowd thins slightly. A raised platform stands nearby. This is where the speakers go, the ones who think they have something important to say. You pause to listen. The man up there gestures as if conducting an invisible orchestra, ranting about grain prices, Persian spies, or possibly taxes on goat droppings. It's hard to tell. Behind you, two men argue about Sparta again. They always do. Someone makes a comment about their mothers. It gets personal very quickly. If you're a woman in this world, the news isn't great. You're not supposed to be here at all. The only women regularly seen in the agora are poor ones selling vegetables, old ones minding goats, or enslaved ones carrying baskets. Everyone else stays indoors. Silent. Invisible. Respectable women are meant to remain behind walls, not rub elbows with garlic merchants. You see a young woman walking quickly, head down and shawl pulled tight. People glance. She walks faster. You stop at a stall selling woven belts. The merchant gives you a half smile and offers to trade for something. Maybe your sandals. You back away. A goat tries to eat the hem of your tunic. You swat it. It doesn't care. there's a line forming near a public notice board. Clay tablets and wooden slats hang from pegs, carved with announcements, new taxes, lost items, upcoming plays. You lean in. One tablet reads, "Trial postponed due to priest vomiting on sacrificial goat." You blink. No one else reacts. Just another Tuesday, you realize now that this isn't just a market. It's a pressure cooker. News spreads here. Rumors spread faster. Politics, inventions, marriages, betrayals. Everything begins here. You overhear a man whispering about a wealthy merchant who fled town with someone else's wife. Another boasts that his cousin saw a Persian in the hills last week. No one believes him, but they nod anyway. And then, amidst all this noise and motion, you hear something else. Music. Real music. A reed flute and a soft drum. A street performer, face painted, begins to act out a short comedy sketch. People laugh. Someone tosses a figure. The actor catches it mid-monologue and eats it without breaking character. It's the first moment of genuine joy you've seen all morning, but even here, in this semi-celebratory chaos, everything feels fragile. A wrong word, a clumsy accusation, a poorly timed joke. Any of it could shift the mood in an instant. The agora is the city's pulse, yes. But it's also its pressure point. You start heading back, dodging a man carrying a piglet under his arm. Your feet are dusty. Your ears are ringing. Your pouch is still mostly empty. The agora has taken more from you than it has given. Still, you'll return tomorrow, because in this world, survival depends on being seen. You don't last long by staying invisible. You last by showing up. Even when the bread is stale, the wine is sour, and someone is trying to sell you a cursed figurine of Hermes. Let's assume, for a moment, that you're not one of the lucky few allowed to strut through the agora freely. Let's say you're a woman in ancient Greece. Now go back inside, that is the rule. If you're female and living in Athens, your job is to not be seen. The ideal woman, according to the poets and philosophers of the day, is modest, silent, and entirely domestic. Her virtue is measured by how little the public knows her name. If you're known outside your household, it is probably a scandal. Or a tragedy, so while the men are out philosophizing and yelling about barley taxes, you are in the gyneconitis, the women's quarters. These are separate rooms tucked away at the back or upper floor of the house. Dim, cramped. Often hot. Privacy is minimal. Natural light is rare. Fresh air is something you hope for. You spend most of your day spinning, weaving, and managing the household. Even if you're from a wealthier family and have enslaved servants, you're expected to oversee it all quietly. You measure out food stores, direct the water collection, and maybe, just maybe, sneak a glance at the courtyard if no men are around. Historians still debate how strictly these gender divisions were enforced across different city-states. Sparta, for example, allowed women to own property and exercise in public. But this is not Sparta. You are in Athens. So pick up your spindle and try not to draw attention. Let's talk about marriage. You're likely wed by your early teens. Your husband is probably much older. The wedding ceremony includes symbolic gestures such as torchlight processions and offerings to Hera. It sounds romantic, perhaps. Except you don't get a say. The match was arranged by your father and negotiated like a cattle trade. You're expected to produce heirs, preferably sons, and manage the home. That is your life. For decades. You might not even know how to read. You eat separately from the men. You don't attend parties. You certainly don't sit at symposiums with philosophers and artists. The closest you get to those discussions is hearing them echo through the clay walls while you stir lentil stew, and if you're poor, it's worse. You might have to fetch water from the fountain house, haul laundry, or sell herbs in the market. Still restricted. Still scrutinized. Still considered suspicious just for existing too far from your home. Today, for example, you've been sewing since dawn. Your fingers are raw. The wool smells faintly of lanolin and smoke. You're working on a tunic for your husband, or maybe for the son you birthed last year. You haven't slept since. The baby is colicky. Your mother-in-law thinks it's your fault. The midwife muttered something about a neglected shrine to Artemis. Speaking of shrines, you pause to light a bit of incense at the small household altar. It's wedged into a corner near the kitchen hearth, blackened from years of smoky prayers. You whisper a plea to Hestia. Keep the fire strong. Keep the family safe. Let your husband not come home angry. A sudden crash from outside breaks your focus. Laughter follows. Men's laughter. You freeze. You weren't supposed to hear that. Or care. If you're caught outside alone without a proper escort or excuse, people will talk. Maybe you're a hetaira, one of the educated. Independent courtesans who attend symposiums and trade wits with Socrates. But probably not. Hetairai are rare, expensive, and always walking a razor-thin line between admiration and scorn. No, you're expected to be invisible. Even your clothing reflects that. Long robes. Face half covered. Dull colors. Your job is to manage the private world so the public world can pretend it's functioning. You glance out the small high window. A sliver of sky, brilliant blue, taunts you. It's not all misery, though. You find pockets of solace. The rhythm of weaving. The scent of herbs hanging in bunches from the rafters. The comfort of routine. Sometimes the neighbor women visit to help with wool or gossip about a cousin's ridiculous new sandals. And on festival days, you might be allowed to join the procession. Dressed in your best. Carrying a basket. Walking solemnly toward the temple. It's brief, but it is a glimpse. Still, you know the truth. You are boxed in. Your world is bounded by walls, made of clay, enforced by culture, and shaped by invisible lines. Even your dreams must fit neatly within those limits, and if you break the rules, there is no court case. No second chance. Just shame. Isolation. Maybe worse, you return to your work. The child stirs. A pot boils over. The fire spits ash into the room, and you rush to adjust the kindling before it dies out. Your hands are always busy. Your voice is always quiet. Your presence is always conditional. This is what it means to live as a woman in ancient Greece. Not just unseen, but unheard. Not just under control, but under expectation. Even your silence is scripted, and that is the hardest part. You're not just surviving. You're expected to do it beautifully. So, you're back in the agora, or at least trying to be. You shuffle past a group of chattering men, only to be stopped at the edge of a shaded colonnade. There's a rope strung loosely across a marble threshold, and a burly man standing guard. He gives you a quick once-over. You a citizen? He asks. That's a complicated question in ancient Athens. Unless you're a free-born, adult male whose parents were both Athenian, congratulations, you're not one. No matter how smart, rich, or well-dressed you are, if you don't meet all those criteria, you're excluded. That means no voting, no speaking in the assembly, and no say in the laws that govern your life. You nod to the guard anyway. He grunts and steps aside. Inside, it's a wide open space, the Nyx, the official assembly ground. Stone steps form an amphitheater carved into the hillside. At the front stands a small raised platform. That is the bema, where speakers deliver their arguments to the citizen assembly. And it's not as noble as you might imagine. The place already smells of sweat, dust, and roasting chickpeas from someone's lunch. A flock of pigeons roosts on a nearby pillar, occasionally dropping commentary of their own. You grab a seat. No cushions, just stone. Someone next to you is adjusting their himation and mumbling about grain prices. You nod like you understand. You don't. But neither does he. Probably, a man steps up to the bima. He's older, bearded, sun-darkened. He clears his throat and begins to speak, loudly and passionately. The topic? Whether to raise taxes for road repair. Half the crowd boos before he finishes the first sentence. This is democracy in Athens, loud, messy, male-only, and surprisingly fast-paced. There's no prime minister. No silent ballots. Votes are often cast by a show of hands. In some cases, pebbles are dropped into urns. It feels more like a game show than a government. Historians still debate whether this direct democracy was truly fair or just theatrical. Today, it feels like watching ancient C-SPAN with more shouting and fewer suits. Another speaker takes the platform. He's interrupted within 30 seconds. The crowd heckles. Some jeer. Others laugh. Someone throws a figure. That's the ancient Greek version of muting the microphone. If you tried this in most parts of the ancient world, like Persia or Egypt, you'd be arrested. Or worse. But here, everyone talks as if they're owed a platform. Of course, the catch is that everyone doesn't mean everyone. Women can't speak. Enslaved people can't attend. Foreigners, known as medics, just watch from the sidelines. You begin to notice how absurd the whole thing is. One man argues passionately that Athens should spend more on the navy. The next insists the money should go to a new statue of Athena. A third claims that none of it matters because the omens are bad and we're all doomed anyway. Someone brings up Sparta. Everyone groans. The vote happens. Hands go up. There's counting. Then there are disputes. Then more counting. And finally, a decision. Just like that, a law is made, or repealed, or adjusted based on the mood of the crowd. You lean back on the warm stone and squint up at the sky. There are no clouds. The sun is merciless. Your back is stiff. You're dehydrated. And still, this is considered one of the most enlightened governments of the ancient world. Think about that. The man next to you starts talking. He's proud of Athens. He talks about the glory of the polis, the strength of citizen rule. You nod along. Then he casually mentions that he owns 3 enslaved workers and once bribed a juror with cheese. That's the thing. This isn't the democracy you know. There's no constitution. No universal rights. Freedom is conditional. And power? Still concentrated in the hands of the loudest, most persuasive, and most connected, and yet. It works. Kind of, despite the chaos, Athens survives. Even thrives. Plays are funded. Temples are built. Philosophers roam the streets, challenging people's beliefs. And every man here, every citizen, believes that he has a voice. That belief is powerful. Maybe even revolutionary, just don't expect nuance. Or justice. Or comfort. As the assembly disperses, you get up. Your joints pop. Your legs are asleep. Your stomach growls. The crowd surges back toward the agora. Arguments continue mid-step. Deals are struck without breaking stride. Someone's yelling about taxes again. You're tired. And you haven't even done any actual work yet, but at least today, you got to vote on something. Assuming you were allowed in, if not, then you stood outside, watched the citizens shout, and pretended it mattered to you too. Something's wrong. Not in a dramatic, someone is being sacrificed kind of way. It's more like a tickle in your throat that won't quit. You coughed during the assembly. Twice. Someone glared at you. And now your chest feels tight, like it's wrapped in damp linen. Congratulations. You're sick in ancient Greece. You head back through the dusty streets, weaving between stalls and ox carts, trying not to make eye contact. There's no real hospital to go to, no clinic with gently beeping machines and softly lit waiting rooms. If you're lucky, there's a healer in your neighborhood. He's a man who calls himself a physician, wears a frown like a uniform, and has several theories about bile. Yes, bile. According to Hippocratic medicine, your body is governed by 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Too much of any one, and you're in trouble. Modern medicine would call that nonsense. In ancient Greece, it's the gold standard. The physician greets you with a distracted nod. He's grinding something that smells like vinegar and onions in a stone bowl. He takes one look at you and says you're probably imbalanced. You don't know which part of you is imbalanced, but the word sounds serious. He offers a choice: garlic paste for the throat or a gentle purge. You choose the garlic paste. It burns like the fires of Hephaestus and makes your eyes water. He nods. Satisfied, then comes the leech suggestion. You politely decline. He looks disappointed. Instead, he rummages through a pile of herbs, picks out something gray and stringy, and says it's for tea. You ask what it is. He says not to worry, it's from the hills. That's not reassuring. But you take it. Historians still argue whether Hippocratic doctors were actually effective or just slightly better than snake oil salesmen. In this case, you're pretty sure it's the latter. Back home, you brew the tea. It smells like damp moss and regret. You sip. It does nothing except stain your teeth. You lie down on your mat. There's no pillow. Just a rolled-up cloak that smells faintly of goat. The light coming in through the door has gone from golden to hazy. Afternoon is slipping toward evening. You try to sleep, but there's a commotion in the courtyard. Someone's trying to exorcise a spirit. Apparently, their cousin sneezed during lunch, and now they're convinced it's Apollo's wrath. You cough again. A neighbor drops by with advice. Wear garlic around your neck. Bury an egg under the threshold. Whisper a prayer to Asclepius, the god of healing. You try one of those. The egg thing. It breaks. Now your doorway smells like breakfast gone wrong. Someone else suggests rubbing your chest with olive oil mixed with crushed fig leaves. You try that too. It mostly makes your tunic stick to you. There's no such thing as antibiotics. No antiseptic. No germ theory. If you cut yourself and it gets infected, you may never recover. Minor injuries are life-threatening. Diseases spread fast. Plague is always just one boat away. In fact, you remember hearing about one a few years back. It swept through Athens like wildfire. Some say it came from Egypt. Others blame bad omens. Either way, it left thousands dead and the rest paranoid. You roll onto your side, pulling the cloak tighter. The fire has died down. No one's relit it yet. You shiver, and not just from the cold. Your throat hurts worse now. It's swollen. Breathing through your nose feels like dragging air through wool. Still, you try not to complain. Complaining is for those with choices. You sip more of the herbal sludge and think fondly of lozenges, humidifiers, and pharmacists who don't recommend leeches. Night comes early here. There are no streetlights. Just the flicker of torches and the occasional glow from a brazier. Shadows stretch along the walls like sleepwalkers. You hear someone singing a hymn to Artemis in the distance. It's oddly beautiful. Even as your sinuses betray you, you consider seeing another healer tomorrow. Maybe the one who uses spells. He chants in a high-pitched voice and spits in bowls of milk. People say he once cured a man of hiccups by tying a frog to his back. You cough again. Loudly, someone in the next room sighs. You whisper a quiet apology and sink deeper into your cloak. You wonder if your humors will rebalance by morning or if your soul will just quietly check out. Either way, you've learned something important today. In ancient Greece, getting sick is not an inconvenience, it's an adventure in survival. You wake up groggy, stiff, and still vaguely smelling like garlic tea and desperation. But your fever has eased slightly. Your nose is no longer a sealed tunnel, and you can swallow without sounding like a dying goose. You're not dead yet, which is good. Because today, you're going to the gymnasium. You might be imagining a clean space filled with polished columns and men doing synchronized lunges in breezy tunics. Reset that expectation immediately. The Greek gymnasium is a dusty, sweaty sprawl of stone and sand. It's outdoors. There are no treadmills, no lockers, no protein shakes. What it does have is a lot of yelling, olive oil, and bare skin. Yes, bare skin. Everyone here is working out in the nude. This isn't scandalous. It's expected. In fact, the word gymnos literally means naked. You walk in and are immediately greeted by the sight of 20 or so grown men wrestling, running laps, and throwing heavy discuses, all while glistening with oil and sand like half-baked statues. You feel very overdressed. The first thing you notice is the smell: sweat, earth, oil, and faint whiffs of something medicinal. A man is rubbing another man's back with a long, curved metal tool called a strigil. It's used to scrape off the oil and grime after a workout. It's not graceful. The sound is somewhere between peeling a vegetable and scraping old gum off marble. You are expected to oil yourself before exercising. A gym attendant hands you a tiny flask and a stern look. You dab some on and immediately regret it. The sun hits your skin, and you feel like a salad about to be grilled. You try to blend in by stretching awkwardly near a column. Two young men next to you are deep in a conversation about Homer's Iliad while simultaneously sparring with wooden swords. It's impressive, but also very distracting. One of them swings too wide and knocks over a jar of water. No one reacts. Historians still argue whether the gymnasium was more about physical fitness or philosophical bonding. Either way, it's definitely a place where people sweat and talk too much. You're invited to join a game of pancration, a terrifying blend of wrestling and boxing with almost no rules. Biting is frowned upon, but not entirely banned. You decline politely. They shrug and tackle each other anyway. Next up is a long jump practice. But there are no sandpits or coaches shouting encouragement. Just two stones marking a start and end point, and men swinging stone weights to propel themselves forward. You try it once. It ends poorly. You nearly faceplant and earn a few polite chuckles. Someone pats your shoulder. You assume it's sympathy. Eventually, it's time to cool down. You sit under a fig tree near the periphery, trying not to look too self-conscious. A group nearby is debating ethics. One older man, wrapped in a worn wool cloak, is saying something about virtue being more important than pleasure. Another counters with a joke involving figs and goats. It doesn't land. One man nearby gestures toward you and asks if you believe in moderation. You answer something vague and nod a lot. They nod back like you're wise. This is the second half of the gymnasium's charm. It's not just about muscle. It's also about mind. Philosophers, teachers, and young aristocrats often gather here to discuss ideas, critique poetry, and debate morality. It's part classroom, part fight club, part street cafe. The topics range from the practical to the profoundly weird. You overhear one conversation debating whether men who sleep facing north gain more wisdom. Another wonders if dreams come from the stomach. A third argues that eating garlic improves memory. You'd be a genius by now. The gymnasium is also a place for networking. If you want a patron, a teacher, or a job, this is where you linger. Show off a bit. Impress someone with your knowledge of Plato. Or your ability to dodge a flying discus. but you also can't ignore the social rules. If you're poor, no one cares what you think. If you're a foreigner, you're tolerated but barely. And if you're enslaved, you don't enter. Period. The gymnasium is for citizens and status seekers. The rest are not welcome. You spend an hour there before admitting defeat. You're sweaty, sore, and have sand in places that should never know sand. You wipe down with a scrap of cloth and try to clean off with the communal sponge-on-a-stick system. It's every bit as awful as it sounds. As you leave, your sandal sticks in the mud near the gate. You tug it free, nearly twist your ankle, and take that as your cue to retreat. You're not sure you got stronger. But you did avoid being punched, dropped a philosophical quote at the right moment, and didn't vomit from exertion. By ancient Greek standards, that's a win. You're just starting to catch your breath from the gymnasium when someone rushes past you in the street. His cloak flaps behind him, sandals slap the ground, eyes wide with panic. Another man follows, yelling something about Sparta. Again with Sparta, you don't need an oracle to figure out what's happening. Something has gone wrong. And in ancient Greece, that usually means one thing: war. It's always looming. Always rumored. Whether it's border skirmishes with Boeotia, naval tensions with Corinth, or the ever-present threat of Sparta pressing from the south, war is as common here as wine. Today, it's just talk. But talk has a habit of turning real. You head toward the edge of the city. To the training fields. A small crowd has gathered. Some watch a group of young hoplites drilling with spears. Others argue over news brought by a trader. Supposedly, a Persian ship was spotted near the Aegean coast. Maybe it's nothing. Or maybe it's the start of another bloody chapter in your already difficult life. Historians still argue whether most Athenians truly supported war or merely endured it. But when your city-state is surrounded by hungry neighbors, your options are few. Fight, or be taken. Or worse, enslaved. You've never fought in a battle, but you've seen the aftershocks. A neighbor came back from Potidaea with a missing ear and a stare that never focused quite right. Another returned with no leg and a story about dogs scavenging the bodies. You stopped asking for details after that. You linger at the edge of the field. The clatter of bronze on bronze echoes across the space. Orders are barked. Young men puff and strain, trying to lift shields that weigh more than they do. A phalanx only works if everyone moves as one, shield to shield, spear to spear. And that kind of unity isn't easy. It's sweaty, noisy, brutal. You spot an older man nearby, arms crossed. He watches with narrowed eyes and a tight jaw. His leg looks stiff. His expression is distant. You nod to him. He doesn't nod back. Glory in battle. That idea is everywhere. It's in the poems recited at festivals. It's in the plays, in the temples, in every story carved in marble. The names of warriors become legend. Achilles. Hector. Leonidas. They are celebrated like gods, but what the stories leave out is the way your sandals fill with blood. The way you shake at night. The way your friend's body falls so fast that you don't even realize he's gone until he doesn't rise. Nearby, two men talk about a new expedition. They say it's naval. One grins and says it'll be over in a week. The other nods and adds, just like last time. You don't believe them. You've heard the stories from the Peloponnesian War. Piles of bodies. Disease moving through the camps before the fighting even starts. Starving cities. Broken pacts. Entire populations erased. Some victories, yes. But at what cost? And still, people keep going. Because if you're a citizen, you serve. That's not a choice. It's a duty. You march when told, row when needed. If you don't, you're labeled a coward. If you object, a traitor. If you run, you may as well be dead already. As the drills end, you walk back into town. The sun is slipping down now, gold melting into smoke. People return to their homes. They eat, laugh, pretend the horizon isn't darkening. But you can see it in their faces. They glance upward too often. They check their stores twice. They hold their children like they know what's coming. You pass a stonemason carving a name into a wall. A new one. Sharp lines in fresh marble, another soldier. Another hero. Another name to be honored until it fades, replaced by the next. You turn a corner toward home. A dog barks at something invisible. A lyre plays badly from somewhere above. Life continues. But it feels thinner now. Like it could tear at any moment. You don't know when the next war will arrive. But it will. And when it does, you'll go. To the ships, to the front, to wherever they send you. That's how things work here. You're not a philosopher. You're not a god, you're just another shield in the line, praying the man beside you doesn't fall before you do. You need a break. Not from war exactly, since you haven't fought in one yet, but from thinking about it. Your feet are sore, your head aches, and there's only so much blood and sand existential dread a person can process before their soul begins to fray at the edges, so you wander. Past the olive groves. Past the half-collapsed shrine where someone has left a moldy cheese offering. Past a boy shouting about lost chickens. And then you spot him, robes. Beard. Bare feet. Slightly cross-eyed. He stands in the middle of the street as if waiting for lightning to strike his forehead. You've found a philosopher, he's holding a stick. Not for walking, but for gesturing. His audience is a small cluster of tired-looking apprentices and one goat. The goat seems the most engaged, he sees you. Locks eyes. You've made a mistake, he says with theatrical gravity. A new soul arrives. Tell me, friend, what is real? You freeze. It's the intellectual equivalent of being mugged. He takes your silence as an invitation. Is this stone real? He slaps a nearby wall. Or is it merely a shadow of stone, projected by our limited senses into the prison of material delusion? You nod slowly. This is not the rest you were hoping for. He begins to pace. You eat. You sleep. You sweat. But what is the essence of eating? Is hunger a truth, or merely a condition of embodiment? Someone offers him a figure. He refuses it with a wave. I transcend figure. You try to edge away. He follows. Philosophy in ancient Greece is not so much classroom as it is street theater. Anyone can start a school if they have students and enough conviction. And they do. So many of them. Plato, Aristotle, Diogenes. Some teach in gymnasiums. Others preach under trees. Some wear cloaks. Some go nude. One is rumored to live in a barrel. Historians still debate whether public philosophers were revered thinkers or tolerated like mildly alarming street performers. The truth probably lies somewhere between. Your current captor launches into a monologue about time being an illusion and morality being a form of geometry. He isn't blinking. You pretend to be intrigued. A young man beside him scribbles on a wax tablet. Another stares into the distance, poking the dirt with a reed. You notice his sandals don't match. You relate. Eventually, the philosopher's voice rises. Consider the lyre, friend. When it plays, is it the string or the air that sings? You murmur, both. He gasps as if you've unlocked the cosmos. Ah! A duelist. He claps you on the back. It stings. You finally escape by pretending you have to visit a dying relative. He blesses your journey with a chant about ether and disappears down a side street, still talking to nobody. You duck into a shaded courtyard and sit for a moment, trying to clear your head. Philosophy is everywhere here. It's not just academic, it's cultural oxygen. At symposiums, men debate metaphysics. Children recite moral riddles. Pottery bears scratched quotes like "Know thyself, nothing in excess, and avoid debt." You sip some water. It's lukewarm and vaguely metallic. You reflect on what just happened. In modern life, you might go a week without discussing the nature of reality. Here, you can't go 10 steps without someone questioning your existence while barefoot, and this is how ideas travel. Through crowded alleys. Through half-remembered speeches. Through eccentric men who haven't washed since the last full moon. You think of Socrates, the great question asker. He never wrote a word himself. Never charged for lessons. He simply wandered Athens, asking uncomfortable questions until enough people decided they couldn't take it anymore. Eventually, they gave him poison. He drank it. You pass another group of men debating the best way to live. One champions moderation. Another claims honor is the highest good. A third insists pleasure is the only truth. You decide not to participate. You're still recovering from the last conversation. At a shrine on the corner, someone has left a bunch of grapes and a message scribbled in charcoal. It reads, "To Apollo. For insight and shade." You nod in appreciation. Everyone needs a break sometimes. The sun lowers. Your shadow stretches long and thin across the stone, like spilled ink. A boy is reciting poetry to a dog. A girl is drawing shapes in the dust. Two men are comparing footnotes on Play-Doh. A peddler yells that true wisdom is knowing the right time to buy figs. Your head is full. Your stomach is empty. Your spirit feels somewhere between inspired and lightly overcooked. Here is the truth: in ancient Greece, you don't get to zone out. Not in the agora. Not in the gymnasium. Not even during a stroll. Every stone might be a metaphor. Every goat might be a symbol. Every passerby might ambush you with a question that ruins your appetite. You reach your door. Your mind is buzzing. You wish you had just kept walking. You're home again. Finally. Sort of. Because it doesn't feel like home when you're covered in dust, your brain still echoing with metaphysical riddles, and your stomach growling like Cerberus in a particularly foul mood. You're also very aware of something else. Your entire body smells like gymnasium, stray goat, and burned olive oil. You need to clean up, which brings us to a very important and very unpleasant topic in ancient Greece: bathing, or, more accurately, the lack of it. Let's clear something up early. There are no showers. No warm jets of scented water. No tile-lined bathrooms with fluffy towels and loofahs. There's no soap either. That hasn't been invented yet in anything resembling modern form. So how do you bathe? You slather yourself in oil. Olive oil, to be precise. And not for moisture or shine or smelling like a boutique, but because it loosens dirt and grime. After rubbing it in, which already makes you look like a roast chicken, you scrape it off with a tool called a strigil. It's a curved bronze blade, about the size of a butter knife but much less friendly. You strip down, grab a flask of oil, and try not to think about where this strigil has been before you. They're not exactly personalized. You start the process in the courtyard. That's where most people bathe, outdoors in the open air. There's a small basin of cold water nearby, mostly for rinsing your hands or face. But full immersion is rare. You oil your arms. Your chest. Your legs. It feels slimy. Then comes the scraping. Long, deliberate strokes. The strigil pulls up dirt, sweat, and tiny hairs, leaving behind streaks of irritation and the faint scent of olives that have experienced far too much. You try your back. Fail. Twist awkwardly. Drop the strigil. Curse softly. Retrieve it. Try again. By the end, your skin feels raw, shiny, and slightly betrayed. But at least the gym stench is mostly gone. You toss the used oil and dirt sludge into a corner jar reserved for that purpose. You don't ask what happens to it. You suspect it gets reused. Historians still debate whether communal bathhouses were common in classical Athens or more of a later Hellenistic and Roman practice. Some public baths did exist, but they were few and mostly for the wealthier class. Most people stuck to the oil and scrape method. Or, if desperate, dunked themselves in a stream and hoped for the best. You wipe yourself down with a linen cloth that feels like dried bark. It leaves fibers behind. You look like a badly seasoned cut of meat. Now clothed again, you feel not refreshed exactly. More like reset to factory dirt settings. You glance at the water basin. It's muddy now. A bug floats near the surface. You consider dumping it, but it's probably needed for cooking later. So you just cover it and move on. Hygiene here isn't about luxury. It's about not being offensive. That's the baseline. No one expects you to sparkle. They just don't want to gag when you enter a room. There's no dental hygiene to speak of. No deodorant. Some people chew on twigs or rinse with vinegar. Others carry sachets of herbs under their tunics. One man in the agora earlier smelled like mint, ash, and raw anxiety. You admired his effort. You sit on a stool in the corner of the courtyard, drying slowly under the last rays of sun. The air is warm. And for a fleeting moment, peaceful, until someone nearby starts arguing again. You hear words like inheritance, witness, and sheep. Voices rise. Something ceramic breaks. You let out a long sigh. Being clean here isn't relaxing. It's functional. It's preparation for dinner, for prayer, for yet another discussion about grain tariffs. Still, there's something meditative about it. The routine. The scraping. The sensation of becoming slightly less unpleasant to yourself and everyone else. You think about modern showers with pressure settings and lavender soap and music playing softly through waterproof speakers. Then you return to your reality. Sticky linen, creaky joints, and the faint smell of cooked olives wafting from your own armpits. It's a humbling process. You glance at the small mirror. Just polished bronze, slightly warped. Your reflection wobbles like a nervous ghost. You nod at it anyway. Clean enough. Tomorrow, you'll be dirty again by midday. That's the rhythm here. Dust. Sweat. Scrape. Repeat, but for now, you've won a small battle, and in ancient Greece, that counts. It's just before dusk now, and you're back in the courtyard, picking olive skins out of your tunic and wondering if you can pretend to be sick again to skip dinner duties. But you can't. Because while war, politics, and philosophy swirl through the city streets, your daily life still orbits one ancient force, the gods. Religion in ancient Greece isn't a part of life. It is life. There's no such thing as secular here. Every harvest, every headache, every cracked tile or stubbed toe has divine implications. You don't believe in the gods the way you believe the sun will rise. You behave as if they're actively watching, easily offended, and sometimes unreasonably petty. Dinner begins with a quiet ritual. A few drops of wine are spilled on the ground. That's for the household gods. You whisper a prayer. Something small. Something safe. Keep the hearth warm. Don't strike us with plague. That kind of thing. You eat facing the small shrine in the corner, where a clay statue of Hestia sits chipped but dignified. She's the goddess of the hearth, the center of the home, and honestly the most reliable of the Olympians. No scandals. No thunderbolts. Just warm fires and slightly better bread, and tonight? You need her. The lentil stew is fine. Thin. There's a suspiciously chewy piece of something in it. Maybe a mushroom. Maybe not. You don't ask. The barley cakes are dry, but they soak up the soup. And that's enough. You eat in silence, listening to the crickets begin their song just beyond the courtyard wall. Someone coughs again. A dog barks. The stew bubbles. After the meal, you help clean up. Not because it's fun, but because if you leave the pot unwashed, you might anger one of the lesser gods, like Aristeus, the protector of beekeeping and olive presses. He seems chill. But you never know. Historians still argue whether most Greeks genuinely believed in the gods or simply observed rituals out of habit and fear. But you're not risking it. Not after what happened to your neighbor last week. His goat broke its leg. His fire wouldn't stay lit. And then he got lice. 3 omens in 3 days. He's been whispering apologies to Hera ever since. You gather with your household near the altar. A small offering is prepared, maybe a cake, a pinch of incense. Or some flower petals. If it's a festival day, there might be music, dancing, maybe even a parade. But tonight is just routine. You watch as the fire is rekindled. Smoke curls upward. Someone hums a hymn. A soft tune that repeats the names of the gods like a lullaby. Athena. Artemis. Demeter. Poseidon. Their names are everywhere. Engraved in stone. Painted on walls. Whispered in dreams, you think of the temples you've passed. Grand, white marble homes for these divine personalities. But they're not just beautiful buildings. They're active zones. Places where the gods live. Where you leave gifts in hopes of favors. Sometimes a priest gives you an omen. Sometimes you get silence. Both are terrifying in their own way. You remember once watching a procession up to the Acropolis. Women in white robes carrying sacred baskets. Men playing flutes. Children scattering petals. It looked like a celebration. But it felt like a negotiation. Always a negotiation. Even in your dreams, the gods appear. Sometimes disguised. Sometimes obvious. If you wake with a start, heart pounding, you don't shake it off. You go straight to the altar and offer something. Wine. Wool. A whispered apology. Tonight, someone lights a bit of frankincense. The smoke is thick and sweet. You breathe it in, hoping it counts as both a prayer and a bath. Religion here is part theater, part fear, part comfort. It explains the unexplainable. Why crops fail. Why lightning strikes. Why your friend fell off a ladder and broke both arms the day after joking about Zeus. You stretch out on the courtyard mat, the stars beginning to flicker overhead. Someone points to a bright one and says it's Hermes. Another says it's a hero, placed in the sky for bravery. You believe both. Or neither. Or whatever keeps you safe, because safety isn't a guarantee here. But faith? Faith is armor. Not foolproof. But enough to keep the monsters at bay for one more night, and as your eyelids grow heavy, you whisper one more thing toward the shrine. Not quite a prayer. Not quite a wish, just, please, please let tomorrow be gentle, please let the gods be elsewhere. You've survived another sunrise, barely, and today, you're in for a treat. Your neighbor, who still insists he's related to Euripides, has invited you to the theatron. Yes, that's right. Theater. Culture. Drama. You're finally going to enjoy something, or so you think. The journey begins at dawn. That's already a bad sign. You're not even fully awake when you're herded up a steep hill with what feels like half the city. Everyone's jostling for a seat. Not a good seat. Just a seat. The open-air theater stone rows stretch up the hillside like the world's most uncomfortable stadium. You sit. The stone is cold and hard. You already regret not bringing a cushion. A man to your left is eating boiled chickpeas. Loudly. Another is drinking watered wine and telling a joke you can't hear but deeply wish you couldn't. Still, there's a kind of energy in the air. This isn't just entertainment. It's ritual. It's civic duty. It's religion, in a way. Plays are often performed during festivals honoring Dionysus, the god of wine, madness, and the theater. A solid portfolio, you glance around. Even the archons, the city officials, are in attendance. Everyone goes to the theater. Rich, poor, citizens, even some foreigners. It's one of the few public spaces that actually feels public. A hush falls, the play begins, a chorus enters, singing in tight harmonies. Their robes swirl, their movements choreographed like waves. Behind them looms a painted backdrop of a palace. It's flat, symbolic, and effective. Then the main actor appears. He's wearing a giant mask. That's normal. The mask's exaggerated expression lets the audience see emotion from far away. Frowns, wide eyes, gaping mouths. It's stylized drama. The voice is projected through a built-in mouthpiece that makes everything sound slightly like shouting into a jug. You squint. Are there women in the cast? Of course not. All roles, whether male, female, divine, or monstrous, are played by men. Even goddesses are portrayed by guys in wigs and falsettos. You spot a character named Antigone stomping across the stage with calves that would terrify Apollo. Historians still argue whether these plays were subtle critiques of society or thinly veiled civic propaganda. Either way, everyone's paying attention. Even the guy with the chickpeas has stopped chewing. The tragedy unfolds. It's dramatic. There's a curse, a long-lost brother, and a mother who might be the villain. There's a scene where someone weeps on the ground for several minutes. You shift uncomfortably. The guy next to you sniffles. Or maybe he's just allergic to fig trees. Then comes the monologue. Every Greek tragedy has at least one. A character steps forward, stares into the middle distance, and contemplates everything. Fate. Honor. Death. Whether or not to defy the gods. You try to follow along, but your stomach chooses this exact moment to growl like a mythological beast. Someone chuckles, the actor pauses and looks directly into the audience. Your soul exits your body. Eventually, there's catharsis. The main character suffers. The gods are appeased. The chorus sings a final tune that reminds everyone that hubris is bad, war is worse, and life is mostly pain with brief pauses for olives. Applause erupts. Some people toss flower petals. A man near the front yells something poetic. A child nearby imitates the chorus and trips over a goat. You think it's over. It's not. That was the first of 3 plays today. Because in true Athenian fashion, when they do theater, they do it in bulk. Often, one tragic playwright presents 3 tragedies and a comedy in one sitting. You're trapped in a marathon of masks, monologues, and moral lessons. You sneak a sip from your water flask and try to get comfortable on your slowly numbing backside. The second play begins. This one involves a vengeful spirit, a snake, and a man who keeps yelling "Woe is me" while ripping his robe. You relate. The sun climbs. The stone heats up. People start fidgeting. The actors do not. Finally, at the end of the third tragedy, a comic relief play begins. A satyr play. Imagine a raunchy skit with flute music, absurd costumes, and actors in, how to put this delicately, enhanced garments. It's loud. It's silly. There's a lot of wine jokes. The guy next to you laughs so hard he drops his chickpeas. You smile. Just a little. You may not understand every line. Some references are local politics or obscure mythology. But for a moment, it's joyful. Human. Ridiculous. A reminder that even in a city haunted by war, disease, and debate, people still crave laughter. As the crowd files out, blinking in the late afternoon sun, your body aches, your brain is overcooked, and your tunic smells like someone else's wine. But your heart? A little lighter. You survived Athenian theater, barely, and you'll never complain about a 2-hour Netflix movie again. You've barely made it halfway down the hill from the theater when it hits you, not inspiration. Not divine revelation. Something darker. You pass a man with shackles around his ankles, carrying a sack of clay. He doesn't look at you. Behind him, another figure, a woman, no older than you, balances a basket on her back that looks far too heavy for her spine. She winces as she walks. You've just exited a festival celebrating tragedy. Now you're walking straight through it. Slavery is everywhere in ancient Greece. It's not hidden. It's not debated. It is built into the walls of this place, temples, ships, homes, even democracy itself. You can't spend a day in Athens without passing someone whose name will never be remembered. These people build the roads you walk on. They fire the pottery you drink from. They nurse the babies of your neighbors, tend the olive groves, row the warships, and they don't have a choice. Historians still argue about the exact number. But by most estimates, nearly half of the population in classical Athens are enslaved. That means if you're sitting at a table with 4 other people, odds are good 2 of them are not free. You pass a tannery. The smell hits first: rotting flesh, urine, sour chemicals. Inside, figures work with quick, practiced hands, scraping hides and soaking them in vats. No one looks up. They've been doing this since before sunrise. A boy, maybe 10 years old, trips with a jar of dye. It spills. The overseer grabs a switch and raises it. You look away before it lands. You try to justify it to yourself. You tell yourself it's just how the world works. You say, well, even philosophers had slaves. And they did. Socrates, that wise old question-asker, lived in a household where enslaved people probably cooked his meals. Plato's academy had servants. Aristotle taught the son of a Macedonian king, with slaves attending them both. But knowing that doesn't make it feel less wrong. You once heard someone say the worst part of slavery here isn't the pain. It's the erasure. Enslaved people don't get tombstones unless their owners give them one. Their stories are passed down only if they're tied to someone else's fame. Their children. Also property, and escape. Nearly impossible. If you flee, you're branded. Literally. A hot iron to the forehead, just above the eye. A mark for life. You pause at the edge of the agora, where a small group has gathered. They're looking at a wall of painted tablets, names and crimes. Some are citizens. Some are medics, foreign residents with limited rights. But others? Just slaves. Listed like inventory. One name is scratched out. You ask someone why. He stole bread. They say, you nod, but your throat is dry. Later, at home, you see her again. The Thracian girl from your courtyard. She's carrying 2 amphorae. Her arms tremble. You move to help. She flinches, not because you're dangerous, but because she's been trained to expect danger. You take one of the jars anyway. It's heavier than it looks. The clay presses into your palm. You set it down near the hearth. She doesn't speak, but she nods. That night, you eat a little less. The lentils taste different. Not worse. Just heavier. Like you're chewing with your conscience. You lie awake on your scratchy mat, staring up at the rafters. The wind slips through the cracks in the wall. Somewhere outside, someone's singing a work song. It's slow, rhythmic, tired. You think of all the people who lit lamps, ground flour, wove cloth, and boiled your stew today. You think about what you did, and what you didn't, and in the dark, you realize something awful. You could live your whole life here. You could walk every street, vote on every law, quote every poet, and never be punished for ignoring them, but you'll never forget that look she gave you, the one that said, "I'm still here. Even if no one else sees me." Morning again. But this time, no grand festivals, no philosophers cornering you in alleys, no lingering theater emotions or political debates. Today is about something far more basic. You're hungry, and not metaphorically hungry for justice or truth. Just actually hungry. The kind that gnaws at your ribs and makes your thoughts slow, so you do what every Athenian does on a normal, dusty, very not special day: you eat barley. Yes, barley, again. Barley is the silent hero of ancient Greece. It's what people eat when they can't afford wheat, or meat, or literally anything that would taste like a celebration. Barley is ground into flour, boiled into mush, pressed into cakes, or just chewed raw if you're desperate. Today, it's maza. A kind of barley cake. Dry, flat, often stored for days in a clay jar, and about as exciting as eating a small brick. You gnaw on it anyway, because it's food. Technically, you wash it down with watered wine. The same cup from yesterday. Maybe the day before. You hope it was rinsed. There's a pot bubbling by the hearth. Lentils again. They're the color of wet dirt and smell slightly better. You stir, hoping for a surprise. Some herbs. A carrot. A miracle. But it's just lentils. You don't complain. Because complaining doesn't make the pot fuller. Historians still debate whether the ancient Greek diet was healthy or just brutally repetitive. Yes, there's olive oil, grapes, fish, and fresh produce if you live by the coast, have land, or aren't dirt poor. You, however, are landless, inland, and increasingly familiar with the taste of onion skins. Your neighbor brags about getting honey this week. Real honey. You suspect he's lying or he's stolen it. Either way, you feel judged. Midday approaches, and you're still chewing the same barley crust. You head to the agora for a change of pace. And by that, you mean more food you can't afford. Vendors shout prices for everything. Dried figs. Smoked fish. Piles of wrinkled olives. You spot some cheese. Soft, white, probably goat. You don't ask how much. You know how much. It's too much. You pass a man frying dough in oil. It smells incredible. You think about what you trade for a single bite. A favor. A sandal. Your entire dignity. You settle for a handful of wild greens, bitter and sharp. The seller throws in a clove of garlic and calls it a deal. You try not to cry. Later, you help grind grain. Not because you want to, but because the woman in charge of the household told you to, and you're too tired to argue. The hand mill is heavy, awkward. Your wrists ache after 3 minutes. You imagine doing this every day, twice a day, for years. Someone nearby jokes that if you ever stopped eating barley, you'd lose half your body weight and all your personality. No one laughs. By evening, you're back at the hearth. You eat more lentils. You break off another hunk of maza. This one stale to the point of architectural use. There's some pickled fish passed around. It smells like seawater and regret. You eat a bite anyway. Salty. Sharp. Your tongue tingles. You're not sure if it's supposed to. You remember a story someone told you about a man who once tasted peacock. It was roasted in honey, stuffed with herbs, served with cheese and dates. A once-in-a-lifetime feast. You eat a piece of onion, you think about peacock, you lie back against the courtyard wall after dinner, belly full. Not in a satisfied way, but in the I won't pass out way. The stars begin to show. Your jaw is sore from chewing, and it hits you. This isn't a bad day. This is normal. Routine. Typical. Most days in ancient Greece aren't filled with war, gods, or speeches. They're filled with barley, repetition, and gnawing. You'll dream of roasted lamb tonight. Or honey on warm bread. Or wine that doesn't taste like sour herbs and despair, but when you wake up tomorrow, you'll eat barley again, because that's what survival tastes like. The day hasn't even begun properly and already you feel it. That prickly sensation on the back of your neck. No, not the sun. Judgment, because in ancient Greece, someone is always watching. You step into the street, adjusting your tunic, trying to remember whether your himation is folded correctly. An old woman across the way narrows her eyes. That means you failed. You do a quick, awkward tuck. Still wrong. Doesn't matter. She's already whispered to her neighbor, in this world, social standing is more fragile than clay. Every gesture, outfit, and spoken word can ripple through the city faster than a rumor about adultery. And by the way, those are the most common rumors. You pass the fountain house and catch the tail end of a conversation. Two women are filling their water jars, their voices hushed but clearly delighted. Did you hear? One says. Her husband's cousin saw her walking near the potter's shop. Alone. You don't need the rest of the sentence. Being alone means scandal. Even if she was just buying a jug, you move faster. Athens may claim to be the cradle of democracy, but it also nurtures a robust culture of gossip, surveillance, and social shaming. Everyone knows everyone's business or thinks they do. And everyone believes they have a civic duty to correct you or at least talk about how someone else should correct you. Historians still argue whether this was a form of communal cohesion or just polite tyranny. You're leaning toward tyranny. Even the architecture encourages it. Narrow streets mean tight proximity. Windows overlook courtyards. Markets are jammed together. There's no privacy. Not in your home, not at the fountain, not at the gymnasium. Especially not there. Every cough, every skipped offering at a shrine, every time you slightly raise your voice, it all becomes material for the next chorus of murmurs. Later, at the agora, you try to blend into a crowd. It doesn't help. You overhear someone muttering, "Isn't that the one who spoke too loudly at the last assembly?" Or maybe, "Didn't he buy wine with small coins?" You're not sure. You don't want to be sure, you try to shop discreetly. You pick up a fig, feel its weight. Pretend you might buy it. A merchant grins. Must be a good week, eh? You blink. He knows you usually don't buy figs. How does he know you don't buy the figure? At home, the scrutiny continues. Someone asks why you haven't visited the shrine lately. You make a joke about Apollo being busy. It lands poorly. The silence afterward is thick enough to chew. You retreat to the courtyard and try to read a wax tablet. You feel eyes on you from the neighboring roof. You pretend to read harder, then there's the symposia. If you're invited to one, great. Unless you drink too little, which makes you seem cold and aloof, or too much, which makes you loose-lipped and dangerous. If you recite poetry, it better be good. If you sing, you'd better have been trained. If you speak about politics, you'd better know what you're saying. One misstep and suddenly you're the story whispered around the fountain house tomorrow. Even the gods watch. Especially the gods. You miss one festival, forget a sacrifice, or walk past a temple without nodding, and suddenly misfortune is your fault. Someone's child is sick. It must have been your incomplete offering to Demeter. A storm ruins the olive harvest. Clearly, you've offended Poseidon. You do everything right. Mostly, and yet, you still feel it. Eyes, whispers, glances, you sit beneath a fig tree in your courtyard and wonder what happens if you just stop. Stop caring, stop performing, stop folding your tunic the correct way. Would the sky fall? Would the neighbors riot? You bite into a figure. It's overripe. Sweet, but not in a good way. You wipe your fingers and decide not to test that theory, because in this place, survival doesn't just depend on food, strength, or the gods, it depends on reputation, you don't have a credit score. You have whispers. And those whispers can raise you or ruin you before you ever get a chance to explain. You head inside. You adjust your himation again. You nod to the neighbor watching from her doorway, she nods back, you're safe. For now. You've seen enough whispers, side eyes, and judgmental shrines to last a lifetime, but you've barely scratched the surface of how society here really holds people accountable, because today, you're going to court, not as a criminal, hopefully, but as an observer. Or maybe you're being dragged along by a friend who's suing his neighbor over some sheep that allegedly stared too long at his fig tree. It doesn't matter. You're going to witness Athenian justice in all its chaotic glory. You arrive at the law court early, because if you don't, you might not get in. Yes, it's first come, first argued. The place is packed. Hundreds of men are crammed into an open courtyard, shaded by awnings that do nothing against the noise. Chickens peck nearby. Someone's selling honey cakes from a basket. It smells like sugar and sweat. There are no lawyers. No judges in robes. No dramatic cries of objection. Just citizens. A lot of citizens, welcome to jury duty, ancient Greece style. The jury might consist of 500 to 1,500 men, selected by lot that very morning. Yes, your fate could be decided by a retired potter who just wanted a free snack and a farmer who's still mad about a lost goat. Historians still debate whether this system was egalitarian brilliance or a complete madhouse. Today, it feels like both. You spot the clariterion, a strange slab of stone with rows and slots, used to randomly assign jurors. It's part lottery, part bureaucracy, and somehow still faster than most modern systems. The plaintiff and defendant each stand before the jury. They've prepared speeches, sometimes memorized, sometimes ghostwritten by professional orators. Because, again, no lawyers. Just loud voices and fragile reputations. The man speaking now is sweaty, passionate, and extremely dramatic. He's suing his neighbor over boundary stones being moved. He swears on Apollo, swears on his children, maybe even swears on your future dinner. He gestures wildly. A small child applauds. The jury eats it up. You look around. Most jurors are chewing something. A few are nodding. One is napping. Another is picking his teeth with a stylus. Then the defendant stands. He's calm, logical, dull. He quotes Solon. Bad move. The crowd likes drama. Halfway through, a vendor yells about boiled snails near the gate. Several heads turn. Now it's time to vote. Each juror gets 2 metal discs. One has a solid axle, the other a hollow one. They drop their chosen disc into an urn to cast their vote, guilty or not guilty. The unused disc goes in a separate basket, unseen. It's silent. Then a man counts. Shouts the numbers. The verdict is announced. A few cheers. A few groans. A fig flies through the air and hits no one. Justice, and just like that, it's over. The penalty could be a fine. It could be exile. It could even be death. It all depends on the mood, the speech, and how many jurors skipped breakfast. You step outside, dazed. The process is fast. Brutal. Public. But somehow functional. These trials happen every day, dozens of them. Some are serious, like murder, theft, or treason. Others involve a dog biting someone's sandal, a chicken dispute, or even accusations of impiety, which can be fatal. Just ask Socrates. You walk through the agora, still processing what you saw. A man brushes past you, muttering about appealing his case. Another is shouting that the jury was bribed. A third claims he lost because he's from the wrong demi. You suddenly realize how fragile everything is. Reputation, property, even your life, it can all hinge on a few persuasive sentences and the mood of a crowd. There's no guarantee of fairness. No legal protections. No public defenders. Just words, oaths, and hope. You reach home, unsettled. Your neighbor waves. You wave back. You remember he once borrowed a cup and never returned it. You let it go, because after what you saw today, one thing is clear: you don't want to end up on the wrong end of a barley-fueled public debate over crockery. Justice here is loud, fast, and deeply personal, and you are one petty argument away from being drama for 1,000 strangers with pebbles. Today's lesson isn't about politics or poetry. It's not about gods, glory, or garlic. It's about something far more relentless: work, because in ancient Greece, no matter who you are, citizen, medic, enslaved, or somewhere in between, you work. A lot. Rest is a luxury. Leisure is rare. And every day you wake up one sprained ankle away from disaster, your hands already hurt. You haven't done anything yet, but the joints ache from yesterday. Grinding grain, hauling firewood, helping lift a pot that was definitely heavier than advertised. You stretch and hear at least 3 things pop. Today, you're apprenticing with a potter. It's a decent trade, if you like the smell of wet clay and having permanently stained fingernails. You arrive at the workshop before sunrise. The kiln is cold, which is good. Because yesterday, a man tripped into it and came out with eyebrows in past tense. The potter nods at you. He's been up for hours. His hands are already coated in slip, a liquid clay mixture used for painting designs or smoothing edges. He doesn't talk much. Just points. Your job is to spin the wheel, not a nice electric wheel. Not a tidy table setup. A foot-powered slab of stone you have to keep spinning while he shapes the clay. If you slow down, the pot collapses. If you speed up, the pot collapses even faster. You spin. He shapes. You sweat, the air smells like mud and smoke. Flies hover. Your back starts to complain around minute 7. The potter adds a handle. It breaks. He mutters something about Poseidon and throws the whole piece back into the pile. You keep spinning. Later, you help gather clay from a pit nearby. It's sticky, heavy, and full of pebbles. You carry it in baskets that dig into your shoulders. You pass a blacksmith's forge on the way and envy the apprentice inside. Until he drops a bit of glowing iron and screams. You change your mind. Historians still argue whether ancient Greek craftsmen lived decently or just above starvation. But today, standing ankle-deep in mud with clay in your teeth, you're betting on the second. You return to the workshop, arms trembling. The potter is now decorating pots with red figure designs, mythical scenes, daily life, and some weird image of a man wrestling a dolphin. It's meticulous, delicate work. You admire the detail. You sneeze and almost knock over a shelf. He doesn't say anything. Just stares at you. You vow to stop breathing for the rest of the hour. By midday, your muscles are jelly. You've carried amphory, fetched water, swept ash from the kiln, and broken at least one thing you're pretending you didn't. You eat lunch crouched near the back door. Bread, an olive, and a lump of cheese that might actually be chalk. You chew anyway. You're too tired not to. Then it's back to work. You help load the kiln. It's an infernal task involving tight spaces, hot walls, and hoping the whole thing doesn't explode. You learn how to stack the pottery so the flames heat them evenly. You don't understand the process fully. You just know not to cough when the kiln master is holding a torch. By late afternoon, your legs are wobbling. The sun has moved across the sky like it's trying to rub it in. You clean tools, sweep floors, and try not to fall asleep standing up. Someone drops a jug. It shatters. No one flinches. Just one more to remake tomorrow. Finally, the potter lets you go. You stagger outside, blinking at the sky like a mole. Your skin is covered in dust. Your tunic is stiff with dried clay. Your hair has absorbed so much kiln smoke it smells vaguely like roasted chickpeas, and you did this for what? A few coins? A meal? A place to sleep where no one yells. You pass a shepherd on the way home, herding goats with a stick and a voice that could split marble. His feet are cracked. His face is leather. He gives you a nod. You nod back, as if to say, yes. This is what we do. Work is survival here. It's not about fulfillment or creativity or climbing a corporate ladder. It's about not starving. It's about not getting sick. It's about making it to tomorrow, and just maybe, after a few decades of spinning wheels and sweeping floors, you'll have enough to pass something down. A home. A donkey. A name, but right now, you just want to lie down and never lift anything again. Your hands are still spinning in your dreams. The sun sets behind the hills in a wash of dusty rose and smoke-stained orange. You should be sleeping. But you can't, because the night in ancient Greece is not peaceful, it's not cozy candlelit serenity. It's loud. You lie on your mat in the courtyard, which is still warm from the day's heat. The sky above is clear, glittering with stars. No light pollution exists here. You can see constellations with unnerving clarity. Orion. The Pleiades. The crooked grin of the scorpion, but even as the heavens look peaceful, the world around you doesn't sleep. A dog starts barking. It's not a cute warning bark. It's an angry, throat-shredding kind that makes you wonder if someone is stealing goats. The bark echoes down the alley and sets off 2 more dogs across town. You pull your cloak tighter and try to block it out, then comes the laughter. Somewhere nearby, a group of men stumbles home from a symposium. You can hear the clinking of wine cups and slurred voices quoting bits of Homer. Someone tries to sing. Someone else vomits. A jug shatters. They laugh again. This is normal. Nights here are not for resting. They are for surviving. If you live near the edge of the city, there's the fear of bandits. Men who slip through the hills under moonlight and steal whatever isn't tied down. If you live near the harbor, it's drunks, gamblers, and the occasional brawl over fish. There's no police force. No emergency number. What you have are torches, neighbors, and luck. You hear a scream. Brief. Distant. No one reacts. Not even the dog. Someone starts playing a flute. Historians still argue whether ancient cities had effective night watch systems or if they simply trusted citizens to stay vigilant. Tonight, vigilance feels more like insomnia than safety. Your neighbor's baby starts crying. The thin wall does nothing to muffle the sound. You sigh. You can hear the mother trying to hush it with a lullaby about Demeter and golden grain. The melody is nice. The baby does not care. You shift on your mat. The ground underneath is uneven. Your back finds every stone. The stars keep winking at you like they're in on the joke. You think about your day. You worked from before dawn until dusk. You hauled, spun, scraped. You ate food so bland your taste buds have started staging protests. You bathed in oil. You got judged for standing wrong. You watched a man lose his case over a broken fence. You nearly died of boredom during a philosophical rant about the moon being made of fire. And now you can't sleep, because someone's donkey is braying as if possessed. There's no mattress. No blanket. Just a thin cloak that barely covers your knees and smells vaguely of mildew and effort. You tuck it tighter. Your feet are cold. Your head is warm. Your heart is just tired. You try to remember the last time you truly rested. Not just collapsed, but rested. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let your mind drift without fear of missing barley or being accused of sacrilege or waking up to find your sandals chewed by rats. You're not sure that's ever happened here, someone walks by in the street. Sandals slap the stone, slow and deliberate. You freeze. The steps fade, a rooster crows, it's not time yet, you try to roll over. The mat groans. Your bones groan louder. The baby is crying again. The dog is back at it. The flute hasn't stopped. You start to wonder if it's just one guy in your neighborhood determined to personally ruin the sleep of every citizen in Attica, and still, you don't sleep, because ancient Greece doesn't allow sleep. Not the soft, complete kind, only the shallow kind. The kind where you drift off with one eye open, one ear twitching, and one hand still gripping the edge of the world. Eventually, your body wins, you don't notice the exact moment it happens. But your breath slows. Your limbs soften, and for a few hours, just a few, you forget the barley, the barking, the court trials, the spinning wheel, you dream of silence. You wake slowly, not to music or morning birdsong, but to the same thing you always do, a dull ache in your shoulders, a cramp in your calf, and the unmistakable realization that your back has spent the night arguing with the stone floor again. The sun is barely up. Just a faint glow stretching along the edge of the rooftops. Someone nearby is already coughing. Another day begins, you sit up slowly, rubbing sleep, or what passed for it, from your eyes. Your mouth tastes like dust and old lentils. A beetle scurries across the mat. You don't react. You're used to him now. You might name him, you stand. Everything pops. Knees, hips, something in your neck that probably wasn't supposed to make that sound. You stretch, careful not to step on the corner of your only cloak. Someone stokes the hearth. The scrape of iron against clay. The smell of smoke and yesterday's ash. You breathe it in, another neighbor is already sweeping her doorway. Another is feeding goats. Somewhere, a pot cracks. No one yells. It's just background noise now. You shuffle toward the water jar. Cold. Metallic. It hits your teeth wrong. You splash your face, ignoring how your reflection in the bronze basin looks like someone halfway between a statue and a potato. You reach for the bread, it's harder than yesterday. You don't care, you eat it slowly, staring into the distance. Not thinking about anything, and then, because you must, you begin again, another day of walking, lifting, pretending you know what philosophers mean when they say the soul is shaped like a sphere. Another day of dodging whispers, hauling things twice your weight, and hoping the gods are too distracted to curse you today. You tie your sandals. One strap is fraying. You'll fix it tonight. Or not. You've said that for 3 nights now. You hear someone laugh. Not a mockery. A real laugh. Just a boy chasing a dog around a well. For a moment, it feels like something good, but you don't stop. You have to meet someone at the agora. Or maybe the kiln. Or maybe it's your turn to help mend the wall that keeps collapsing no matter how often you patch it. Your shadow follows you, long and wobbly, stretching toward whatever this day decides to be, and as you step into it, you realize one last, simple truth. You wouldn't last a day in ancient Greece, but somehow, you just did. Wind down, and now, as the streets of ancient Athens fade behind your eyes, let your breath slow. You're no longer walking beneath the scorching sun, or dodging goats in the marketplace, or gnawing on stone-hard barley. You're no longer trying to remember whether you're supposed to honor Demeter or Apollo at the household altar, or if your tunic looks too wrinkled for the agora. You're just here. Still. Warm, feel your limbs grow heavy. Let the ache in your imagined muscles dissolve. Let the flicker of oil lamps, the creak of worn sandals, and the distant murmur of philosophical debates drift away like sea foam on the Aegean. The crowd fades. The gossip quiets. The judgmental neighbor closes her shutters. Even the ever-watchful gods blink their eyes closed, and here you are, wrapped in something softer than any ancient cloak could provide, peace. You've wandered through dust and marble, firelight and fig trees, straining to understand a world that thrived without comfort, without rest, and often without fairness, and yet, even in that struggle, there were stars. Laughter. A boy chasing a dog. Sleep finds you now, not with force, but with quiet invitation. Close your eyes, let go of the wheel. Step away from the kiln. Leave the courtyard, you've earned your rest, sweet dreams.